Welcome back to the Nullified Take, where we've got the TNT takes for you on the challenge All-Stars 3. That's right, it's Friday evening, so it's time to talk the challenge with my besties, Chantel and Drew. Chantel from the Reality Realness channel with 3 S's, also streaming today on that channel as well. Chantel, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm really happy to be talking to you guys about this episode of All Stars because there's a lot that went down, and I'm interested in hearing your takes on it because I have been talking about it a lot this week. And I don't know, this season, no matter what happens, I think it's a really excellent season. So I'm having a fun time.
Yeah, I'm really interested to know what our final thoughts are going to be because I feel like we could have 3 or 4 different opinions on this podcast about some of the things that went down. But here's a man that have been analyzing it, probably has watched it 5 or 6 times already this week, has put a lot of content out about the challenge episode 5. Drew, 4 times. So I was close. How you doing?
I'm doing well. I was only able to watch it 4 times this week. I was a little tight with some of my video schedules, but yeah, I'm excited to hear what everybody has to say. I was sad I wasn't able to join in with Chantel's on Twitch this past week like I did the previous week because I thought that was fun to hear like initial thoughts and reactions, but I wasn't able to do it this week. So I'm excited. I'm going in blind here with what everybody is going to have to say about this episode, which has a lot to go over.
Yeah. Well, everybody that's in the live here, we already have 20 people that have jumped on board. Welcome. It's always great to have you here. We've got Zuduman, who was the first. Then we've also got Dolores second. Baby Ice, Lovable Nikki, Hector, Amber. Everybody welcome in the live stream, and even those that have not said anything as of yet. We're very interested to know what you guys think, so please take part in the conversation as we recap this episode. Let's start right from the beginning. We hear a little bit more about Yes talking of villains in the game and how he's going to play this trustworthy and straight game, and a lot of that is going to sort of follow him throughout this episode. It is the new school, mid-school, new school approach of Wes to the challenge versus the very old school, honorable approach that Yes have. And that was a big part of the storyline. Were you guys surprised to see that this continued? I feel like they've been setting it up for quite a few weeks now that at some point, Yes and Wes, they're going to go head to head.
I definitely I know that was coming. We can see in all the after interviews, Wes has a lot to say about, and even yes, they're both kind of still having a little bit of a combat outside the game. I just didn't think they're going to go head to head so soon. And so I was like, oh my God, is it now? This is so early to lose one of them. I'm like, is that what's going to happen? And so I was getting nervous. Now, in terms of Yes and his old school mentality, to me, it shows that he hasn't been watching the game and as the game has progressed, because his idea of how the game is supposed to be is a really very early 2000s version, before like alliances came into play and before like strategy in these games really evolved. And so I wish that Yes had maybe been, up to date on the strategy of it all, because maybe him and Wes could be good allies and they could have worked together and like done something big in the game. But, we can't have it all.
I agree with Chantel in thinking that it happened way too soon. I was not expecting it. I thought they were going to like go back and forth this whole game until the very end, and then maybe only one of them would make it to the finals. So I thought it was going to happen way later, but they set it up pretty well. I thought it was a little light on the Yes and Wes bickering back and forth throughout this episode. I mean, really the star of the episode was Beth versus John A., featuring MJ in this episode, but they did set it up pretty well. But I just didn't want it to end. I didn't want it to end because I really like this light versus dark, evil versus good situation that they had. But alas, it had to have come to an end at some point, and it was inevitable. And it just happened in
their
episode
names were
5.
Too similar names for that to go on too much longer, because I was like,
it helps us.
Yes, Wes. Like it was challenging to get them under control.
It's like Highlander. There can be only one 3-letter person in this challenge. And I was going to say, Wes kind of reminds me of a Pokemon trainer. He's got to catch them all the rivalries in this game. He needs to add them. He needs to be the person that's got the most rivalries in the game. And he created a whole new rivalry with someone like Yes this season. But for me, one of the things that makes the challenge exciting to watch is seeing rivalries play out. So I feel like as a viewer, we're bit poorer for this rivalry ending as soon as it did this season. So I'm 100% in agreement with you, but I do think that in the shadows lurks Jordan, and Jordan and Wes probably will be the next two people that are going to go head to head at some point, because as they said here in this episode, we need to get Yes out first. We need to get MJ. Those are the two previous champions, but Jordan is someone that is extremely capable. Wes is interesting with his strategy here early this episode, because he now goes to the OG guys. He talks to Mark, Brad, I believe Derek was in there as well, and he says, hey, condolences, you lost a great fighter in Darrell, but I'm here. I'm willing to slip in and play the Darrell role. I'm not the same kind of player, but he's working all different angles here, trying to work his way in and have many alliances. Brad is very reluctant about the fact that Wes is playing so many different sides to this game. But I mean, this is classic Wes, right, Chantel? I mean, you come to expect him to be this kind of player that has to have all the alliances, have to have all the rivalries out there. And this is why we love him. This is why I think TJ loves this season more than some of the previous All-Star seasons.
Well, definitely we know what Wes needs to do for himself in the game. And he knows also what he's probably was hired to do in this game. I'm sure he's getting a big appearance fee for Wes to do his antics, to do his politicking, to do his rivalries. I think this is all what was expected of him when he was cast this season of the show. And so I was like, yes, let's go. Well, not yes, but Wes, yes, let's go. And let's get some alliances. And he's saying like, yeah, I want as many alliances as possible. He just knows, in my opinion, how to make good TV, how to make things interesting, how to make him castable for the next season. Like, he just knows how to be a really great The Challenge cast member. And I love seeing what he's going to do. I'm always like, what's he going to do next? And I also love how he was like, if people think I'm going to do one thing, I'm going to do something different. And I'm like, you know what? That's true. He's not predictable. And so I'm here for all the Wes antics.
Just a quick one on that, and then we'll go over to Drew to also add to it. Wes, to me, and I know you'll appreciate this because you have watched Big Brother for many seasons, reminds me so much of Dr. Will because of that unpredictability that he brings to his gameplay, and he does have a little bit of a charm, and I think it's one of the reasons why I do enjoy seeing him play. He's a little bit more rough around the edges than Dr. Will, but that unpredictability, the fact that he can create a lot of work for himself and then sort of maneuver his way out of that is something that I think it's a lost trade when it comes to these personalities that we get on our screen these days for reality TV.
Yeah, I could see that. I mean, I think he plays a riskier game, and Wes plays a riskier game than Dr. Will played on his seasons. I think he was a target out in the open, and he was too big for people to actually see. It was crazy. All-Stars, the first All-Star season, not the flop stars, but the first All-Star season was crazy. But I wanted to just throw this out there, and I know we're going to probably get into Brad and everything that's going to happen, but I almost think that Brad is frustrated with Wes. Yes, he is a strong ally to have in this game, but I almost wonder if in that initial conversation in the gym, Brad was a little put off, because I think Brad was playing the role of having his hands in multiple cookie jars. And he was like, oh, I have Mark and I have Derek, but I also have Nehemiah and Wes over here. And now Wes is like, hey, let's pull all together. And Brad, I think, not saying it in the thing, but maybe subconsciously is going, that's my numbers. Like, you're now cannibalizing my numbers. Now you're getting in good with Mark. Now you're getting in good with Derek. When Mark, we hear at the bar saying, hey, if Brad and Derek don't get called out and go home, I'm good. So I had a lot of issues with Brad this episode, and we'll get into it. But I just thought of that when Chantel was going saying her piece about Wes, and it just initially popped into my head.
I actually didn't really even think about that, but yeah, like if Wes is coming in and kind of moving the pieces around, like what Brad kind of has set up for himself gets disrupted, and he's not in as powerful of a position if Wes comes in and starts dominating the alliance that he's in, and so taking the reins over, he's not going to be as in control. So yeah, I didn't think about that before, but I agree.
Just having a quick look here again at the live before we go into the next few questions. John, hello from Brooklyn, New York, represent New York City. Also here, I think Sam is saying something about, have we seen a post from Jordan's Instagram? I don't know, you guys are sometimes across the social media side of things a little bit more than myself, but I haven't seen anything specifically myself. Also, Selena for life saying hello to all of us as well. And there is a few people bringing up conversation about Beth and the fact that she quit here and that Kendall wouldn't have done so. And there's a few things around that, but we'll address all of that. I'm seeing all of those comments come through. We'll address it as we go through the episode and we talk about the elimination at the end. So please, if there's questions you have, throw it our way as we get into that section. Also here in the early stages, we see that Beth, talking about her, we might as well roll into her. She is still trying to find a way to solidify her place in this game. She's trying to look for allies. She's talking to Kellyanne. There isn't many OG friendly faces around that she can align with. And Kellyanne and her, they've never really had this relationship before, but it's kind of like the enemy of my enemy is my friend in this situation. And she's just trying to find a place to stay at this point. But this Treehouse Alliance, they're so powerful. There's so many women in this alliance at the end of the day that are dominating this game. I kind of feel like, Chantel, we do know that Beth ultimately at the end of this episode does quit, but it almost feels like she had nowhere to go here. She's older than everybody else there. She doesn't have much in common with a lot of the younger people playing. She even says Kayla could have been her daughter. That's the age difference between them. I feel like Beth was sort of set up to lose here. I think the more important question is, do we even at this stage need to see Beth come back and play this game again when you've got so many younger players playing in All-Stars and she has been finding it really difficult?
Well, I think that should be casting younger people on All Stars because I kind of want to see the Beth antics. I want to see Beth and Veronica have to work out their differences. I want to see her play with people, even get back into maybe working with Nehemiah or not. I want to see her and Cyrus being able to play a couple of episodes together. And so I personally would rather see Beth again than see some of these younger players on the All Stars franchise. If they want to come back on the main season, which seemingly is a younger demographic, totally fine. But I feel for me, what I enjoy about All Stars is the fact that it's people that have been on the season that have these long histories that we're seeing play out while they're playing this game for a lot of money. So personally, yeah, I would switch that around. I'd see Beth again before I saw the younger people come back. And also, though, I didn't feel like the actual episode structure of it, the daily, was helpful for Beth at all either. I'm sure that they planned everything out in advance and they didn't know that maybe the treehouse was going to form. But that daily, which I'm sure we're going to get into in a sec, was not helpful for anybody that wasn't in the majority alliance. And so for me, it made the daily not that interesting and definitely not a challenge for Beth to be able to even come close to doing well in.
Yeah. Drew, is it time for Beth to retire, or do you think she's got more to give? What's your stance on all of this?
First, I want to just point this out. Correct me if I'm wrong, but this was the first episode we didn't get an old pun from Kayla, but Chris, you just said something that made me feel like it inadvertently was a diss to the old people, and it had to do something with Kayla, and it was Beth announcing that Kayla could be her daughter and her daughter's age, which is just really funny to me that still somehow Kayla and an old reference gets thrown into the episode, even when she doesn't, she's not saying it. I have to formally apologize, I think, to Kendall and everything that I said in the past 2 weeks about her. I don't like Beth. I don't like her this episode. I feel so bad that she eliminated Kendall, who would not have quit in the elimination in this daily challenge. Yes, she played the victim in some of her confessionals, but I don't care about that. I want to see you compete, and I don't think Beth came in with the right intentions. She didn't care to compete. She just came in here to throw around some accusations that have no basis to them, I feel, because of how many people are coming out on social media. Nia came out onto the podcast of the Challenge Mania to talk against Beth and say that Beth was just spreading around any lie about John A to see what would stick. And I think she did it mainly for the cameras. So I think it was disgusting if this was all just put out there to try to throw a lot of shade on John A and try to help Beth in any way, like her game in any way, which was not going to work. And I really wish that Kendall would have been able to stay and won against Beth, because I don't care to see Beth ever again on this challenge. After two episodes, 2 DQs, I'm done. I'm done with you.
Yeah, and I'm actually we might as well talk about it. It's going to be the biggest discussion point for this episode. When you throw around an accusation such as two people are cheating, it's one thing to do that if they're casually dating and it's a part of the game, which I just still wouldn't like that much. But we're now talking about two people that are married. We're talking about two kids that are involved, and when kids get involved in these kind of things, I take it very seriously. So for me personally, I was really, really put off by what Beth did here. Unless there is evidence of this coming out being true, which it sounds like everything that is coming out is counter that. I think that she did a horrible, horrible thing right here. And if we're going to be very difficult or we're going to ban people from the show for other things that are problematic, we should also look at this very seriously when it comes to defamation of character and when it comes to two kids being involved. The fact that there's two kids involved and that she could have ruined these two kids' life, this to me is beyond the game. Like I'm all, let's have fun, let's lie, let's cheat, let's steal, but this is real world things that are happening to youths out there, and this could affect their life in a really negative way. I mean, this could have, if John A's husband believed this could have changed those two kids' life completely. So Chantal, I'm actually withdrawing this. I'm really put off by what Beth did this episode. I don't know how you feel about it.
No, I definitely agree that like she was speaking like out of turn and like it's none of her business. I'm just thinking that she must have had some reason to say it. And if you guys are believing that she was saying it only as a game strategy to take down Janae, like obviously that is a lot more despicable than just somebody, just being a gossip and kind of throwing around rumors that she's heard. So I mean, obviously we need to know what her intention was originally. And, she hasn't come out and defended her actions or anything that I've seen so far. So I can't fully be like, she's the worst person on the world. Cause like, maybe she has seen something. Maybe there is some truth to what she's saying. Before the season started, I believed that something had gone on between them because we see the scenes where she's like braiding his hair and like a lot of intimate moments. We hear her last season he calls her babe, and there's just a few moments where we're like, there was a connection, and I was expecting them to be in a relationship this season. So I'm wondering if other things went on that would have helped Beth to have that similar conclusion, and she's in that world. And so, yes, I agree that, like, especially because it's a family that's involved and there's children involved, that it's not information to be playing around with. But I'm also wondering if there is more truth as to why she was saying this. I just want to hear a little bit more from Beth before I say that she's like the worst person on the planet. But I definitely don't think that she should have said anything.
You're saying it well, and the thing is, based on the information we have right now, I'm not going to go out there and say cancel Beth and start a campaign against her, but based on what we currently know, I can't endorse her. Now, I'm happy to pull that back if more information came out and there was truth to it. Amber here says, while it's extremely petty, it's not Beth's job to keep Janae secret if they are actually having an affair, which was already rumored before this season. But at this stage, it's only rumors. And I hear you on it. Like if it's true, then fair enough. Beth can. I still think that there is class to how you deal with these kind of things. Just because this is, TV that the kids of Janae, they go to school. Maybe there's people that watch the show together. I don't know. Paramount Plus is probably not as family friendly, but it's on national, international TV. There's ways to do these things. And I just don't know, even if they did cheat, if this was the way to do it, because there are, like, it's not just two individuals that are grown-ups here. Like, and maybe I take it a little bit more personal because I come from a broken home myself, and I know what that can do to kids' lives when parents split up. And maybe I am taking it a different level of personal when it comes to this.
So why do you think then that they aired it? Because, for all the reasons that you're saying, that it could be facilitating breaking a home and whatnot, like the editors felt it was on a level of entertainment as opposed to something that could really break up a family. So I'm just wondering, why do you think that they decided to show it why? Yeah, why?
It's a good point. It's a really good point because you also have to, if you're going to, firstly, the person who said it, they should take ownership of their own actions, especially if this isn't true and it was only a rumor, then they should take ownership of that because they ultimately said it. But how much does production also need to be held accountable for airing it if there isn't truth to this, and they were only because the only reason they would do it is for drama and to build a storyline, right? So and it's a very good point that you put out there, but I don't think production is necessarily choosing a side here saying Beth is right and that's why we're airing it. I think they're purely looking at it from how can we build this storyline? How can we explain why Janae wanted to go against Beth in this episode? And they're probably looking at it from that angle. And I think that it's a really good question. Should this have been aired? But then again, production's in a lose-lose situation, right? Because if they didn't air it, people would have come for them in any case to say, hey, there's this whole storyline that we found out was there and you didn't show it to us. I mean, we've been on this podcast sometimes criticizing them for not showing things. So, Drew, you're normally a reasonable person. You look in all things production. Like, is there anything else you wanted to add to it? Like I said, I'm happy to pull back. Like if Beth comes out and there's some truth to it, I still think there's better ways to do it. But then is there any human being that is perfect and do things perfectly in life? No. So I could still endorse her or change my mind about it. But currently, I'm not feeling too good about what happened here in this episode.
So I have to go with what we have, right? What we have is that we have a history of Beth doing this in her past seasons, but that was way years earlier. So maybe that doesn't play a factor into she comes into the game, she reverts back to what she used to do to kind of get a rise out of people and try to get further into the game. But you have, I think they are when Chris, you said you don't think production is trying to say who's right and who's wrong here, but I do think that production did set it up from last week to this week, trying to show off that Beth does make up stuff for the cameras. Remember the joint confessional between Veronica and Beth, and Veronica throws out there, you do stuff for the camera. You're just a camera hog. You try to like stir stuff up just to get on camera and get your 15 minutes of fame kind of thing. And Beth takes that all offensively. We see that in the beginning of this episode when everybody comes back from the elimination. Beth is sitting there going like, I got to figure something out. I got to figure a power play out. And they're trying to establish that Beth, I think they're trying to establish that Beth is just trying to find a way to wedge into the game and throw shade onto a different player. Whether she did see something or not, that's what I took from the edit. And that's why I think that they felt like we need to show this, because one, John A. and MJ can address it and say point blank in their confessionals that they are not having an affair. And then Beth, and then this whole thing of why would John A. throw herself into an elimination against Beth? Like, why? Like, they would need to figure out a different storyline. This took over so much from the beginning of this episode with Beth saying, I need to figure out a way to make a power play in this game, talking to Kellyanne like 5 minutes later, saying that she doesn't trust John A. for what she's seen in the game. But I think it all went into the storyline and trying to like say Beth is just making this up, and also John A. and MJ to say out there like, we're not doing this. This is not a thing. And to address it that way. I had another thought. Can't remember it. I totally talked myself out of it. But I think it was such a big storyline that the edit was trying to. Oh, that's another thing. I'm sorry, I'm all over the place. But if there was footage, I feel like they would have shown something. Or
I agree.
I also think, and maybe they wouldn't show it because of everything that happened, but I will say that if there's so many messy people on the challenge and on this cast, if there was something going on and Beth said it on the show, do we not think like Jemmy would come out and be like, yeah, I saw it? Or Naya, who was there longer before and after Beth, or Sylvia before and after Beth would come out and be like, yeah, I saw it too. They are doing it. But they came out and stepped up for John A. and stepped out against Beth. I mean, Naya went in on Beth on the Challenge Mania podcast. So I would take their word for it. And because we haven't seen actual proof and Beth has a history of doing this on the show, I'm going to lean on, unless we find proof or somebody else comes out and somebody else besides Beth comes out and says, yes, I saw something and this is what happened, then I will agree with it. But right now I can't say it's like true or
Naya coming to support Janae, and you said some other people. I haven't seen other people come out in support of Janae. Just Naya is the only person that I saw or listened to the clip. Is that they weren't part of season 2 and season 3. Like, they weren't in this world. And so I'm just curious if something went on between the seasons, that because it feels as though Beth came onto the season like angered with this. Like, she was already like, I don't like her, I don't trust her. That was like the vibe that she came into the show with. It wasn't with hanging out with her. So I'm curious if there's more that went on that Naya never saw. Naya doesn't know about, that it might have happened between seasons, because that's when I thought that all like things happened between them. And I saw, a post where I think Janae was with her husband, and I was surprised that she was with her husband, because I thought that they had maybe separated or broken up or something like that, and that MJ was her new person. So I wouldn't be surprised if she had some other information that these new people to season 3 just didn't know.
Yeah. I mean, I would love to know who spread the rumor in the first place, because obviously Beth wasn't around. She doesn't have any evidence. So she heard this from someone. It'd be interesting to know who was the person who spread the rumor in the first place. And then I think what this is a lesson for all of us, how quickly rumors can spread online about someone. And like I said, real life consequences, a family is involved, kids are involved, and everybody on the internet and online have run with it when none of us know the truth. And I agree with Drew when it comes down to who would I listen to. I would rather listen to the people who were actually around them most of the time, who would probably have a very good idea. Now, is it possible? 100%. But
Yeah.
to speculate on it and give Beth any credibility when she doesn't have evidence, to me, is just too far fetched. Like, I just can't endorse what she did here in this episode until I see proof. And then even then, I still feel iffy about the way that this was handled. It's messy. I think all three of us have done the best that we can with a very tough subject, because this affects not just people on the show. It affects, like, there might be people who are watching the show who has an experience with something like this outside of the game that could be triggered by watching something like this, unfold on the screen, because they came from a house where their dad or their mom cheated on their significant other, and that affected their lives. Like, this has got some real life consequences to people when they watch this. This is what I'm trying to say, and that's why I just don't like it. A few people here have said they expect it from MTV, not Paramount Plus. Still the same production team at the end of the day behind the scenes that I think runs this. And I don't want to be too hard on production either. They're trying to put a storyline together. I just felt like this was extremely messy. And I think why it is messy is because all of these people are grown-ups now. I've seen people say Janae has done things in the past on the show. She was a kid back then. Everybody, when they're in their 20s, do stupid things. But you expect people, when they've got a family and they're maturing and they've got kids and responsibilities, you expect them to hold themselves to a different standard, if that makes sense.
So totally agree with that. One thing that I was talking about with this issue was sometimes when you go back to your old stomping grounds, you kind of revert to the version of yourself that you were when you're in that environment. And so I also think that that's a possibility. Like, we know that in the past that this is what Beth used to do. Like, she used to kind of take people's information and use it against them for the camera time. That's what her brand was. That's what she was known for. And so she's coming back into the same environment. She also has an understanding of what is expected of her as Beth coming back on the show. And so, they hired her for what she's supposed to bring to the show. And unfortunately, she kind of took some low-hanging fruit that was like, beyond petty. But part of it, I think, is the fact that it reverts to her 20 years ago self, how she would have reacted in a certain situation, knows what she's kind of being paid to be there to do, and just kind of reverted to her old ways. So I agree 100% that it was really distasteful, that it was really unfair to all parties involved, especially if she wasn't able to provide any specific proof. But I can also understand and have a little bit of empathy for Beth, like, because we're kind of rewarding, Wes here for like coming back. We know Wes is going to go do this. He's going to politic. And we're like, yes, Wes is being Wes. And this is Beth being Beth. Unfortunately, we just don't like how she took this information in this episode. So I agree, but I think there's also might be a little bit of empathy that we can have.
And I will say that I did hear speculation and rumors that Jonna and her husband had separated at some point. And so maybe there was a fling that happened with MJ, but it was during that separation. Maybe they were like fine with it if they went their separate ways for a while and then came back and reconciled. So, I mean, if that's the case, then, I mean, I guess it's technically not cheating, but we still don't have that 100%. I just don't like the way that Beth was using it, like trying to bring it back to game sense of being like, well, she's cheating on her husband. I can't trust her if she's doing that. And it's like, I don't know if that correlates realistically, Beth. But I also think that if you look at how the house is set up, and this is my final thing, if you take a look at how the house is set up, Beth is trying to pin something on somebody that she feels like she can push the numbers towards. She can't do it to Kellyanne because she's trying to come up with Kellyanne. Kellyanne says that she can trust Nia. So Beth is not going to want to throw shade on Nia. And then you have the whole Treehouse Alliance, and she's trying to get something good with Sylvia, who is in the Treehouse Alliance. She's not going to badmouth Veronica or Kayla or Ronnie in that sense. So who leaves that? So, I mean, it's just like, it's too coincidental that she's going to try to throw it all on John A and be like, oh, well, she's kind of cheating on her husband. So, I mean, I don't want to hang out with her or do anything. You should really be pushing her into the eliminations and trying to keep me safe. It's kind of like, if it was anybody else, I mean, maybe there would be something else that we could try to hold on to, but it just seems too coincidental that she's trying to throw all this shade onto John A in such a big way, when she's looking at her as like, oh, well, I can't really trust her. She's kind of out there on an island, so to speak, when she could be the most connected person. I mean, she could be the mob boss of this house in a sense, but Beth doesn't know that. She's just trying to throw her under the bus kind of thing.
Yeah, game-wise, no doubt. She came into a lose-lose situation. There was no way for her to move around. And she was always going to go up against someone that physically probably is better than her. I feel like last week, when she won that elimination against Kendall, she had the one elimination out of 100 eliminations she could beat Kendall on actually happen on that weekend, and that is how she actually pulled it off. But if it was anything else that was more athleticism required to it, I think Kendall would have probably beaten her pretty comfortably in the elimination. So it wasn't going to happen 2 weeks in a row. Picking a fight with someone like Janae, even though Janae hasn't done any eliminations since 2015 or something like that, she is a champion and she is currently in form. She's got the self-belief and the momentum that she can win this show as a whole. You know, she was always going to be very difficult and formidable person for her to go up against in the elimination. We'll talk about that in a little bit. I do want to go into, as we segue here, into the daily. The daily on this one here, they had to run up and down a track. They had to do a ring toss, and it was pretty straightforward. But with these ring toss, I guess the special dynamic to it was the fact that you could choose who you would take out first. And there was 5 rungs that they had to throw it onto. And if you were eliminated, you're out of the game. So it did leave the opportunity there for alliances to work together. Now, obviously, we had a couple of sabotages being thrown out here to no surprise. Beth did get one. I thought it was a brilliant move by Kayla. It was the only move to make because she's already a common enemy for quite a few people in the house. Why change it up? And then obviously MJ has had a few on him before. So Brad ended up putting one on MJ, which created this animosity between MJ and Brad. And you kind of see that play out throughout the game. But before we get into that part of it, what did you guys think of the daily? Did you like this? Do you think that it truly showed people's cards, like TJ said? He said this is one that's going to show your cards where the allegiances are in the game. Do you think that this did that for the contestants?
I think they already all know where the lines are drawn for the most part. And so I love these knockout style, competitions. We see them on Big Brother all the time. I definitely would reveal your cards if it wasn't already so obvious who was working together and who was on the outside. So I wish that either it came earlier or it didn't really have any impact. We all knew going in that someone from the treehouse was going to win the girls' heat, and then obviously from what they decided with the guys, that Mark was going to win. Like, we just knew what was going to be happening to leave. I guess it would be MJ, Yes, and Jordan on the outs for the guys. So yeah, it wasn't entertaining for me for the fact that I pretty much knew what was going on, but I do like this style of competition usually.
Yes, I agree. I like this competition. I like the knockout. We're at this point in the game that everybody's going to work together once you get to this point. Once you get to this game wise, I mean, we saw it happen so early in Challenge 36, Double Agents with the I Spy, where they had to just swim out to get a missile in the cold water and come back. And Fessy and Anissa were just standing by their podium and everybody was just standing around not knowing what to do. I mean, no matter what point in the game, people are going to work together. So I feel like everybody's saying oh, well, this is just boring kind of thing. it's still fun. At least they didn't like run out, grab a ring, and just put it on somebody's rung. They actually had to do some form of like physical task to do it. I think what could be helpful later on is like doing this completely like blind, like making people not know where everybody is so that you could make different moves if you want to, and just like send them somewhere and then just have them just do something, like maybe just put a whole bunch of different plots in, not knowing exactly what they're doing. They just have to put like little pucks into people's names or something. It would be a really boring daily challenge if that's the case, but to me it would make sense to put it where nobody can see other people doing it, to make it at least the possibility of having a different move or having it variable in some way. Having it in front of everybody doesn't do a whole lot. But if you can do it blind and then people are like, I got so many votes. Why did I get so many votes? Why did people dump it on me? Who dumped it on me? And now the paranoia sets in. But I like this one. I like this one a lot more than say I Spy.
It really, for me, what it revealed didn't reveal the alliances as much, but it really revealed who is completely in the dark, right? Especially from the guy's side of things, because, MJ, Yes, and Jordan, they all doing their own thing out there, and they're not involved in any kind of alliance. Jordan's really good at running, this kind of fitted his strength for what he can do really well. If this was about who can get there first and throw all of those rings on there, he would have probably won hands down. But they're all like divided and split. So you've got this unified group of men that are working together, and Yes is targeting Wes because he's got this beef with Wes at the moment, and there's this rivalry going on. Jordan didn't really know where to go, but then he noticed people putting things on his board. So he's like, okay, I'll work with MJ then to get Brad out. But it wasn't really like Yes and Jordan kind of planned for this to happen beforehand. So I really, I felt like there was a few guys that got exposed for just not being able to align or work together, or maybe that bottom group of men just they're even trying to cannibalize each other, which really shows me that majority alliance that Wes has kind of pivoted himself into with the likes of Brad and them, they're gonna run the rest of the season. Like, I do actually believe MJ and Jordan is next. Like, I don't think they're going after each other.
I have a question. Do you guys think it would fix things for this particular daily if the guys were targeting the women and vice versa? And so the treehouse, they could still gang up on people, but they would be taking out the guys in an order. And so it would have been determined by how the guys would allow that to play out. That might have fixed it.
That's awesome. I like that idea a lot. It gives me a Rivals 2 vibe where everybody had to vote and it was the opposite sex voting. So the women would vote in the men and the men would vote in the women. I really like that idea. That would actually fix things a lot, and not knowing going into it, like separate and then just that's it. That would be really, really interesting. Like, that would be showing the cards of who the women are working with.
Exactly.
Because that to me would be a lot more interesting, because we've seen a lot of the guys talking with each other and a lot of the women talking with each other, but we haven't seen too much cross
only Derek.
elimination.
Derek leading the charge.
Definitely not.
Yeah, and those conversations are happening. Those conversations are happening, right? Like, Wes is definitely talking to some of the women in the house and vice versa. Yeah. So it's interesting you mentioned that. And I mean, we had that scene earlier in the season where Janae said she wants to work with Wes. Maybe that becomes more of a thing if MJ goes next, that chases Janae towards Wes to work with him more so. And we do know that MJ, if he makes it to the final, I'll take my hat off to him, but he's a walking wounded man, like he's got that knee brace on. He's not moving the way that he did last season. Even if he did get to a finale, I don't know if he could even complete it at this stage. Like, hats off to him for not quitting, unlike some people this season, and still, pushing through. But, I just don't see him getting to the end and winning this thing. Also on the daily, obviously, the Treehouse had to make it again. Very aware the Treehouse is here. The Treehouse won. And a lot of the people that are in the Treehouse, I kind of think are from an era where the teams aspect of the game was a big thing as well, like your Veronicas and your Ronnies, and that maybe they're more like, this is a team game where we're going to get the whole Treehouse there, but there's no subtlety about the Treehouse being a big thing. Everybody knows about them. I'm surprised that Derek isn't looked at as some sort of a target, being the only guy that's in there. And I'd be very interested to know after the season if the men were even aware that Derek was there. Maybe Derek is their spy. Maybe he is infiltrating them to get like the insights of who they're targeting or what they're thinking for some of the guys that he's working with.
anything clandestine that's going on. Like, you know who's working together and you know who's on the out. So I don't think that his spy work would be very effective because nothing is happening behind the scenes. Like, it's pretty out in the open.
Yeah. Derek is reverted back to his old self of playing the fence. So he is not going to spy anything. He's not going to do anything. He's just sitting there in his little perch with the treehouse over here and the men's alliance over here. And he's just like, cool, I'll sit here. I'll just try to get all the way to the end. I mean, I want to throw it out there. Kendall, I heard the clip of Kendall going after Derek on his podcast, and it was amazing. Like, where was that fire this season for Kendall? Because Derek was like going raving all about like, oh, Kendall's the woman you want to take to the final and do all this stuff with. And Kendall was like, where were you? And he's like, what are you talking about? And she's like, when you voted me in, you say you wanted to run the final with me, but you kind of voted me in there. And then Derek's doing that whole, well, yeah, it's like, okay, dude, you're done.
You know what you just made me think of, Drew, when you said that Derek is playing within his lane right now and he's not trying to do anything more. I don't know if you guys ever watched the Will Smith movie Hitch back in the day, and he was teaching this one guy how to dance, and he was like, just keep it here. Don't move your arms around, just keep it here. Just keep it there when you're dancing. You know, that's what it's kind of reminding me. Don't be too fancy about it. You're going to look like a fool. Don't let people know you're a fool, you know, just play your game. But yeah, I guess the daily, we get the winners. It's no surprise. It was a foregone conclusion. Mark was going to win. Sylvia wins again. So again, Sylvia and Kayla really dominating this season from the females part of it. But I guess the biggest sort of shocker or twist in the game was the fact that we've got a completely new format that we can talk about here now. We've got two people that are going to be in the authority. It's only going to be Mark and Sylvia, and they can put anybody down there. So it's not the last person anymore. But then the big twist and the big kicker here is that you get whoever goes down there, they can call out who they want to go up against if they're not in the authority. I know we spoke about this very briefly last week. I'm assuming it's thumbs up from all of us. I'm really enjoying, I like the call outs. I like the fact that if you're going to go down there, you're going to call someone out, then you can say who you want to go up against, and you can threaten the authority in a way where you can say, hey, your main alliance, if you put me down, I'm taking them down, like with Mark and Brad, you know, and MJ, that whole scenario, it created some great drama where MJ could go to Mark and say, if you're going to put me down there, Brad's been gunning for me the whole time, I'm calling him down. And MJ knew what he was doing. He knew that was going to put a doubt in Mark's mind because it's one of the two people that Mark wants to work closely with. So overall, I love this. I think it's great. It's the right point for me in the season now to mix it up because we've got half the competitors. You didn't want to have only 2 or 3 people eligible to go down there in the arena. Chantel, what did you think of the switch up that we're seeing here at this point?
I like the switch up for the fact that having 6 people when there's like 6 women in the authority, like most likely they're the most fit in the game so far for the most part. So like I was like, the numbers were getting too big for them to be able to be all 6 sitting there. So I like the fact that they downsized to 2 people. I love obviously the call out because it's like then nobody's safe. And the fact that like Kayla was just shaking in her boots because, you know, if they're going to call out Beth might call her. So at least like, you know, people in the treehouse can feel a little bit of heat. I'm wondering though, if it could just up it just a little bit and maybe that still the person that sucks the most goes into the elimination, they get their call out, but then the authority gets to save a person or something like that. Because I do like the bottom person having to go in and if you suck though, like I like the fact that they get to call somebody that's not in the top. So maybe that would for me fix it all completely, but considering what they worked with, I think that it's not a bad fix. So not bad.
I like it. If they would have done that for this episode, I think people would have had a big problem with it because everybody could gang up on the person. I think going forward, they're not going to have that many sabotages going forward. Like they'll have the trivia challenge, which hopefully they do it like last season where it'll be clear who's going to be going into the elimination or getting last place. But I think I like what they did with the switch up. It was unsustainable with 6 people. And I do like the call outs. I had such a problem. I'm just going to go into it. I had such a problem with Kayla and Brad this episode. Like, oh my gosh, you guys have been winning this whole time. And all of a sudden you can't win. And now you're like shaking in your boots for Beth and a hobbled MJ. Like, what are you talking about? Like, Brad is sitting here freaking out. He's at the bar going like, look, I don't play a scared game. So whatever comes, whatever comes. Yet 2 seconds in the confessional, he's like, oh, this my game's on the line. I got to go talk to Wes. Like, what the heck is going on? It's like, come on, dude. Like, seriously?
Yeah, I loved it. I loved I love the whole, like, for me, I mean, it made the episode really exciting, seeing Brad scramble for the first time this season and poor Wes trying to get a couple of hours of sleep before, the next day. He gets woken up in the morning early by Brad coming to, we need to talk, and Wes is like, what? Let's go out there. And then he's having this whole conversation making Wes feel bad about it. And Wes, the complete opposite, he's like, well, if it's going to make you feel better, I'll throw myself on the line. I'll go down there and I'll take on whoever in the arena. And I think that's the difference between a Wes and why Wes is a legend in this game and why Brad is middle of the road at best. Like, I do like Brad, but he's never going to reach the heights of entertainment, of legendary status within this game that Wes will, because, Wes is willing to put his neck on the line. He's willing to do this. And it's also why Wes can either go early in a season or he can dominate a season. He's getting towards the pointy end of the season now, so that's dangerous for people that are still in the game. But, I love this gameplay about Wes. I love the fact that he's not scared. He'll go in there. He'll take on anyone.
I love the fact that I think that he played everybody, because I think that they thought that he was going to call down MJ or whatever, and like I had no doubt in my mind that he was going to call Yes, and he's like, I'm doing this. I feel confident in taking out Yes, and so I knew that he was going to do that, and I was very, very happy that he made this decision. Some people were like a little bit upset that, like, that's not how the game works. You're not supposed to volunteer to go into elimination. I was like, but like, we loved it when Jordan did it. And even when he went home, we're still talking about when Jordan threw down all those X's or whatever, skulls, to go and take on bananas. And so these are legendary moments. And this is Wes being Wes. He's being unpredictable. He is, forcing himself down there to save his friendship with Brad. But I think that was secondary. I think he was like, I want to take out Yes. I'm going to do that. And you're going to let me. So I'm definitely with you. I love the fact that Brad being so like nervous allowed for Wes to come up with this idea, because I don't know if he would have done that if he wasn't trying to appease Brad.
Yeah, I agree. And I just want to throw this out there. I'm so frustrated with Brad because of this whole time of doing these fantasy points and everything. I've been so jealous of Chantel having Brad and his beard on her team. He's won the last 3 weeks. I'm sitting there going like, my gosh, every time I'm putting in confessionals, I'm like, man, I didn't get a lot of points from Brad this week. And then I look at the sheet and I'm like, oh my gosh, Chantel has him. So I've been like rooting for Brad, and I was so hyped up for him at the end of episode 4 and then coming to this episode. And I was like, are you kidding me, dude? It's not the plan. He wanted to throw down the plan of Wes's plan of giving Mark the win. Oh my gosh, this is really screwing up my game. That didn't screw up your game. You know what screwed up your game? Throwing 2 sabotages on MJ and not realizing he's at the bottom of the barrel of this house. So take some responsibility that it was the sabotages that sunk your game and could be sending you into the elimination, and MJ calling you out, which I want to say that's a huge bluff. He wouldn't have called out MJ. He would have looked, or Brad, he would have looked up and been like, I'm going to take the smallest guy on. I'll take on Yes. He would have taken on Yes. But Brad, he hook, line, and sinker with Brad, and he was shaking in his boots. I don't play a scared game. Get out of here, dog.
Yeah. Well, they say imitating players or people are the highest form of flattery. And with your beard getting longer and longer every week, like you're on point with Brad. I feel like Drew's secretly Brad's #1 fan on the podcast. That's why he's got the beard out. That's why he's feeling salty that he doesn't have him in his team. Chantel, we now know how to really get under Drew's skin for any future drafts. Just take Brad away from him, and he'll be extra annoyed by that.
I got the better beard, I feel.
We'll make him argue for him in the next unpopular opinions.
I got the better beard out of this draft, I want to say.
I feel like we'll have to get Drew to argue why Brad does not have the most impressive facial hair on the challenge. That's going to be the really tough one for Drew to argue or debate. I guess, talking about the party scene, one of the things that was observed there is that we're now seeing less and less people actually having fun. So this whole element of the Challenge All-Stars that we used to love, them going out there having a good time, it's all game talk right now. And I feel like with bringing a lot of these younger people in, the gameplay has evolved a lot. Chantal, how do you feel about the fact that this is happening? Because I know you really enjoyed the fact that sometimes they went out there and they had fun, but like we saw in this episode, it was game all the way.
So I'm thinking that, okay, obviously I love gameplay, I love strategy, but also I love the camaraderie and like the friendships and the playfulness and the soundtrack of All Stars. And so I kind of feel, because from season 16 of Big Brother, that's been the era of like, let's make these big alliances and take out everybody on the outskirts. And so, yes, that is strategically sound for you to be able to do to advance yourself and your group further ahead. But I personally don't think it's the best for what I want to see, especially on All Stars. And it seems like the younger people are bringing this type of group mentality and take out the people on the outskirts to All Stars, when I would prefer to have like maybe 3 smaller factions that are kind of working together. And like, I just would like to see a little bit more moving around. And so I'm obviously, I would prefer to see them having a good time and having fun, but it's not really in the wheelhouse of these new school players, because for the most part, they didn't do that on their seasons. On the main show, they don't have as much fun from my perspective as they do on All Stars. And so I think it's because, yeah, they've infiltrated my show.
I also think it's the older crowd trying to figure out the way. So they're seeing how the younger players are doing it, and that's kind of dictating how they're going about it. I think in season 1 of All Stars, we saw party times all the time. Like everybody was just having a good time regardless of who was going into the elimination, who wasn't. And yeah, I think what you were saying, it's the younger crowd kind of get into it, and the older crowd like Ronnie and Yes, they're like, okay, well, I got to do it as well. Like, I can't be the only one dancing on the dance floor. If everybody's talking, I got to be talking to somebody.
Yeah. Now, obviously, Brad and Sylvia makes very obvious decisions here. I mean, if Wes is going to say he's willing to go in there, then, Mark does make the decision of throwing Wes down there, which was obvious. Sylvia, we get a flashback that she had the opportunity to talk to Janae the night before. Janae also wanted to go down there because she got to that point where she just really wanted to get rid of Beth in the game. So they're always going to make those decisions. Some more difficult decisions are on, I guess, ahead for next episode. Who do you guys think they will throw their sabotage on? And do you think Sylvia can actually make a decision on this next one? How long will it take? Should we take bets on it?
She's probably gonna him and haw and be like, oh my god, so nervous about it. It's probably gonna be Kellyanne, because we do see a little clip of Kellyanne maybe messing up the puzzle or whatnot. So I'm wondering if that's maybe the sabotage or something coming into play. But I wouldn't be surprised though if it's a big red herring next week and that Kellyanne maybe does come through with the win, and the sabotage doesn't work. Because we still haven't seen the scene where Sylvia's like, I'm coming for her neck or whatever. And I'm wondering if that has to do with Kellyanne. I'm not sure. So yeah, I think that Sylvia will end up doing Kellyanne, and who's the other person? Mark will do Jordan. I don't think he's friends with Jordan. I think he'd maybe keep MJ for now.
Exactly.
W here says that the new elimination format makes it harder to eliminate Jordan since he would be able to pick his opponent. And
True.
I kind of feel like head-to-head, Jordan can take out most people unless it's going to be a pole wrestle or something where he's got to, grab onto something. And I know we've seen him take out people before with one arm pretty much. But I mean, these are some pretty good competitors still left in the game where I think that some of them, and they're like, Drew's like, what do you mean there's some good competitors? No one can touch Jordan. But I mean, like, no, there's some good competitors left in this game, right? So if he's only got like one hand that he's grabbing onto something, that would be a difficult elimination for him to survive in. But I feel like Jordan is this format probably suits Jordan more compared to any of the other guys, I would say, in the game at this point. Would that be a fair assessment?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, for Jordan on either end, I mean, who's going to call him out? And then if he gets voted in, he's going to have to call somebody out. So no matter what, it's lose-lose whether Jordan is in the contention
Wes might
or
call
not.
him out, but
I think Wes would be getting a lot of hot water if he would get into the authority, because the only person he can really send in who he's not aligned with is Jordan officially. I mean, they've worked together in some of the dailies, but I don't think they have something fully. But if he throws somebody down there, if he throws Jordan down there, he's going to call out somebody, and he's
Derek
like,
probably
freaking out. I'm freaking out who he would call. I mean, so this really helps out Jordan a lot.
I just feel like Jordan and Wes had some conversation before the season, like off the record, and they're like, he's like, yeah, I'll look after you, but he's not. I mean, Wes will say that to anyone, and Jordan just didn't know that many people going into the season, so I'm sure he would have called Wes, or he would have tried to attempt to get something going there. Okay, so the elimination happens, and the elimination is a bit of a dud when it comes to the female side of it, to be honest. Beth gives up in the elimination. I don't know how much we can really add to what we've already added, and we've spoken about Beth and length already. Is there anything, Chantal, you wanted to add to that elimination that she had? And do you feel like it was really unfair, like she thought it was unfair that MJ was helping? Because that's just the challenge, right? That happens every season.
Absolutely. I mean, I think she was just being sulky that like she's down here and whatever. She's just being a sore loser in that sense. But what I've been saying is that okay, MJ is giving correct information to Janae. It's like, go left, go left. So if she's like, go left, you know where Janae is going to be standing. So you retaliate and just go over and you take her out. Like, I just don't know why she didn't use that information, because she was getting direct knowledge as to what to do or how to counter at least what he's saying to do. She should have been able to pick up on where she was in terms of where Janae was, and then being able to, I don't know, duck down and go for her feet in the middle. Like, I don't know. I think that she could have used that information to her advantage, but she was more so looking for how she was the victim of not having a fair shot here, as opposed to taking the information that she had and having a big upset. Like, how bad, like that would have been, you guys would have been pissed, but like that would have been pretty cool if she ended up like winning and beating out Janae.
I know Drew would have been more upset than myself, because, Janae being in the elimination would have definitely, a cold sweat would have appeared on Drew's forehead when that happened, because he's such a big Janae fan. But, I'm second to Drew. Like, I can't claim to be as big of a fan of Janae as Drew is, but you must have been nervous there for a millisecond when she went into the elimination, because we haven't seen her for a while do one of these.
I wasn't nervous at all. If Janae wasn't nervous, I wasn't nervous. I mean, she was cold-blooded. I mean, she hasn't been in elimination the past 2 seasons. She hasn't been in elimination at all since, like, I guess 2015. And she was like dead looking everybody in the face, going like, I want to go. I want to go in. I want to take Beth out. And I think Janae is a student of the game. Like, when she was getting ready to go to All-Stars, I think she did watch some of these past seasons, because she knew how to clock Tina in All-Stars too. So coming in, I think she knew exactly what kind of competitor Beth was, and she didn't care what the elimination game was. She was like, if she's my harshest critic, she's the only one really talking bad about me, I'll go in, I'll take her out, I'll prove to everybody not to mess with me in eliminations. And those are 2 free stars just kind of waiting to be plucked. Why do I want to worry and sit around thinking that Kayla could get those stars or somebody else could get those stars? I want to get those stars. So I'll take out Beth, and I'll do a whole bunch of different things in the meantime while getting 2 stars, because those are going to help me out at some point in the game. Hopefully,
maybe.
So
maybe
5,
not.
and we have no idea what's going on. Where we get all these different twists. But I do want to throw out there, I hated this game. This game was so dumb. If my opinion was, when I first saw the board, I thought it was going to be like Blockbuster from War of the Worlds 2. I don't know if everybody remember that, but if you remember Rivals with the doors, where it was Camilla and Teresa versus Cara and Laurel, and you had to swap out many boards, I thought that was going to be the game. It was going to be best 2 out of 3. Try to push in as many pegs as you can. If you can knock off your opponent during your round of 2 minutes, then you get that round, or whoever has the most at the end of your 2 minutes will win. That's what I thought the game was going to be. I think that's what initially it was supposed to be. But then they were like, we can make it a hard fought kind of like wipeout kind of game. And it just totally failed, in my opinion. Like, absolutely failed.
Yeah, I mean, the guys apparently went on for like an hour or something like that up there, which makes sense, because Yes is someone who's got the endurance. He's pretty fit as well. So, he probably would have given Wes quite a bit of a battle there. I did find it funny, though, every time Yes was like shit talking while this was happening, Wes was like being able to figure out where his head is so he could smash him in the head every time he did that. And Wes was just focused. And another thing I really enjoyed about Wes is that, Wes is a showman. He's someone that does a lot for the camera all the time. Sometimes he does too much for the camera. But one of the things I've noticed about him in recent seasons is he's humble in victory. Like, again, like beats Yes, no pushing his head into the dirt. I'm so much better than you. That's what you get for trying to come against me. There's nothing but respect there. And I think he's probably been humbled in recent seasons, losing a couple of these eliminations as well, where he knows how quickly it can go against you out there. That I respect that. As a sports person, I love what Yes did. Like, you should be able to crap talk someone when you're out there. That's just part of being, competitive in a sporting environment. But when you win or lose, you take it and you're humble. Same with Yes. He gave him the credit, said, I knew you were a good competitor. So do we think that the Yes and Wes rivalry, because a few people here earlier in the live stream said that they don't believe that it's a thing and they think that they played it up for the cameras. Do you think we get to see this Yes and Wes rivalry again in the future? And do you think that this one will carry over to another All-Stars or main season and a Rivals type season? Do you think we see Yes and Wes in the same season again? That's my question. Would you like to see it as well? I personally would like to see it at this stage because they're so opposite to each other.
I would be fine with seeing it because of the fact that they're both willing to go up against each other. Like, they're calling each other out. They had that kind of friendly conversation a few episodes ago where you're just like, you could see that they're kind of caging each other and they're about to, who's going to strike first. I was actually really worried when Wes was calling out Yes, for the fact that we know that in this like postseason, how much Wes has been just talking about Yes and Victoria's minion and like all this stuff. I'm like, oh my God, does Yes take out Wes? Is that why he's so pissed and so mad? And so I was a little bit nervous and worried. I also wonder though if Wes was also playing his part in the postseason to like build up this rivalry as part of being a little bit of a production pet. So yes, I do think that it will be something that continues on because they haven't really concluded it yet. They still are kind of like talking poorly about each other, and I think that if Yes is very competitive, he'll want to come for a rematch. So I can see it happening again, and I'd be fine to see it.
100%. Who wouldn't want to see this? It was the rivalry I didn't know I wanted / needed, and it was so awesome for the 5 episodes that we got it. It was so good. Yes, please.
Yeah. Clash of the styles. All right, let's get into the point system here. Chantal, I know you're on a tight deadline and you've got some places to be. If you want to skip the point system part of it, feel free to drop out at any point.
You know what? I should just drop out and then I'll listen to you guys online while I'm getting ready to get out of here.
I'll do a quick plug for you at the end. Is there anything people should look out for on your channel in Reality Realness with 3 S's?
Everything's pretty slow so far. So just Wednesdays is kind of a double header for the Challenge All-Stars. So 2 p.m. Eastern, we do a little watch party, usually at 8 or 10 p.m. Eastern that evening. Michelle and I will talk about the episode. And then on Thursdays at noon, I do a recap for Beverly Hills Housewives. So that's all that's going on so far, but things are about to ramp up because I know that UK Love Island is starting next week. And then after that, things are starting. So we're going to be busy soon, but right now, calm before the storm.
Coming up, so. Yeah. All right, well, we'll catch you next week, Chantal. Thank you so much for dropping in.
Thanks, everybody.
We'll still be live on Reality Realness, so if anybody is on that side watching it live, don't worry, we'll still be live, even though Chantal is dropping off. She's allowing us the keys to the palace. See you later, Chantal.
Save the palace. Bye.
Bye.
All right, let's get into it. Drew will bring up the point system here, and you can talk us through what happened this week in regards to the points, where we're sitting.
All right, so really, realistically, I thought what was the most interesting is that majority of people that took over in the confessionals, because they were really trying to spread them out, was Brad, John A, MJ, Beth, of course, and then Wes and Yes. So whoever drove the storyline actually got close to double digits. Nobody actually crossed double digits. The people that didn't get a ton of confessionals were Naya, who only got 3, Nehemiah, who only got 2, And Derek, out of the 47 episodes, 47 minutes, at minute 41, Derek finally got a shameless plug for his podcast as his only confessional point,
I heard
which
that, yeah.
which I wanted to ding him like -2 points for his shameless plug. And you could even see it in his face when he's like, this is challenge mania. Like, it hurt himself saying his own podcast name during an episode. So you had
I'm
Brad
surprised
getting...
they let that. I'm surprised that they even kept that in there. I'm like,
I am
that's
too.
interesting. Yeah.
I guess they were like, we need him to at least have one confessional, and that was something decent at least. So MJ, Brad, John A, Yes, and I think that's it. All got 8 points. And then you have Wes getting 9, and the only person that got actually more than him was Beth, who actually got in double digits with 13. So Beth is ending out of 2 episodes getting 23 confessionals, which puts her in higher than a lot of the cast that's still left, who has been there since the very beginning. So with everybody's point total, let's go into Chris, who you are still in 3rd place.
I'm getting slaughtered.
You went up 17 points. Kellyanne only got 2 confessionals. Nia only got 2 confessionals. And Jordan didn't see a whole lot of action. So, yeah, it was only 17 points that you went up. So you went from 129 to 146 points. Then we have Chantel in 2nd place, going from 157.5 to 183.5. So around 26 points, I believe. And her highest score is Veronica at 35.5 points. Brad has a total of 28 points. And Nehemiah, her number 1 man pick, is only 15 points. I mean, Nehemiah is very silent this season, both in confessional wise and game wise. I don't know what he's doing.
That.
It's really difficult to see what he's doing. And then, of course, I'm winning, going from 179.5 points to 241.5 points, with John A as my main point getter, winning in the elimination and having 8 confessionals this episode, getting 42.5 points. And then we have Wes with 36 points, Sylvia with 33 points, and Mark with 34.5 points, luckily giving that win given to him. Now, I do want to throw this out there. This is how spoilery the trailer to this season is. I knew exactly who the last 7 women were going to be in the game and the last 8 men in the game, because this past week's daily challenge, they showed all the men lined up at their boards and then running, and you could clearly see them and see their names on their board. So I'm throwing this out there. We talked about it off screen last episode. Chris and Chantel both said that they had not watched the trailer. And of course, I did my full trailer breakdown before we even did the draft. So I knew going into it, just from watching the trailer and dissecting it screen for screen. So if you are someone who doesn't want to be spoiled at all, stay off of social media. Don't look at any comments on social media, as well as don't watch the super trailer, because that's how spoilerific it is. I mean, I was surprised. I was looking at it going, did they really show us the last 8 men in the game? Did they show us who the first 4 men are out of this game? And even my comment section was like, what the heck? I had to put in a spoiler warning at the beginning of my trailer breakdowns now, because I'm like, look, there's potential spoilers all over this. My Discord was telling me you should put warnings on all your trailer breakdowns, because it's very much spoilerific. I'm happy for the Challenge USA's little trailer. I've seen them blur people's faces out and their names on their helmet. So they're learning, at least for the Challenge USA that's coming out really soon in July. But for this season, they didn't do it. They were just like, whatever, we're going to let everybody just see everybody for some reason. So,
yeah, that was surprisingly accurate. And myself and Chantal, obviously, we didn't see that before we did the fantasy draft, but we also have changed the way that we do the fantasy draft right now. It's kind of sad because we love doing it live when everybody can participate. And I mean, Baby Ice, co-captain, gave me Naya, who's like one of the few people that are still in the game. So 1/3 of my team is due to Baby Ice giving me someone. And we can't have that, sadly, now in the future, because we've already done our Challenge CBS draft we pre-recorded that prior to anything being available. So we've got no spoilers. There's no chance for spoilers. We're going to do the same probably for 38. We'll have to pre-record it way in advance when we know this is the cast that is locked in, because we don't want to be spoiled. We don't want there to be any chance of seeing a trailer or knowing people that could go deep into the game, because it can make it quite lopsided. I guess it's sort of showing on this draft at the moment, but it's not really your fault, Drew. It's something for production to look into when it comes to these shows. It's just for people that analyze it and are big fans like yourself, and you want to do a lot of content on the show. You're going to do your due diligence. You're going to break down every little thing in a trailer. That's what makes you good. That's why people want to go to your channel, because there are people who want that level of detail and knowledge to what is happening and have it explained. Like, I mean, you put a lot of effort into that, so definitely don't blame you for it. But from a competition standpoint, myself and Chantel, we're in trouble this season. We've both got 3 people left in the game. I've got Jordan, Kellyanne, and Naya. I feel good about all 3 of them being good competitors, but it's going to be a mammoth task for them to catch up points-wise because I'm so far behind. Chantel's got Nehemiah, who we just quite rightfully said has been quite quiet so far this season. We haven't seen much of him, but that could be a good thing as well. Like, he could still be around for a while. Brad obviously has been a very big character again this season. So, I mean, but that could mean he goes out again just before the final, like last season. Who knows? And then Veronica, I've got less hope for her personally. She may get to the end with her political game, but I don't know how she would do in a final compared to a lot of people that are younger than her this season at this stage. And then, Drew, you've got the pick of the litter at the moment, really, when it comes to people on your team. I don't even know, when I'm looking at your team, who potentially is going to be the first person out. Like, I mean, Sylvia is probably the pick of the season. She's the blue chip stock of the season because she's won like a lot at this stage. So you must be pretty good about that pick.
Well, I didn't even get to pick her because she was the last pick. So she actually fell to me, which I'm very surprised of exactly how she was the last person even dropped to me. I think out of everybody, MJ showed the weakest points of his game. He's both physically and strategically and politically weak at this point. So I can see him being the first one being thrown in there. He'll call somebody out. And I mean, going up against any one of these guys is going to be difficult. I mean, there's no slobs or slouches left in the game for him to try to win against. I mean, and I would even say, like, he didn't win against, I'm not saying that he won against Cyrus and Cyrus is a slouch. It's just Cyrus thought too much into his own elimination, and MJ was the benefactor of that. I really think MJ would have been gone if Cyrus would have just jumped through that wall when he had a big enough hole. But I think MJ is going to be the first one gone out of my team easily.
Baby eyes, mate. If I ever needed a pick-me-up, that's the pick-me-up right there. You know, Naya and Kellyanne will dismantle the treehouse. I hope that does happen because obviously both of them are in my team. Ronnie probably is the other person, if I look at your team, that I would say she is in the treehouse, but I feel like she's on the outskirts of that treehouse. Like if things get to a point where they have to start cannibalizing themselves, I feel like she's someone that they will throw out there to fend for herself the quickest probably. I don't blame her for being a part of that alliance. I mean, it's been very convenient for her up to this point, and she was new to the game. She needed to make some friends, and I think she's succeeded in doing so. I've also been really impressed by Ronnie, even in the dailies. She seems to be a pretty good competitor, so who knows? She might actually go down there and win one. And like you quite rightfully said, Drew, she was a big part of the trailer as well, so there must be a reason that they hyped her up that much.
Yeah, I mean, we saw Ronnie get intense this past week's daily challenge. I mean, she was pissed that Naya and John A were throwing rings on her board, and she actually took out John A and Kayla. I do think that she is on the outer ring of the Treehouse Alliance, but it's helped her get this far. And honestly, if I'm picking Ronnie and a lot of the other Treehouse Alliance, I would pick Ronnie. I think she has a lot more physicality. Like, if I'm Veronica, I'm quivering at anybody calling me out. Let's just be real. So yeah, I would be freaking out if I was Veronica. You're thinking of anybody outside of this, John A, Kellyanne, and Naya, who aren't officially in the Treehouse Alliance, and you have to go up against any one of them. Veronica's going to be their first pick to face off an elimination. It'll be her or probably Ronnie. Maybe Veronica, maybe Sylvia. I don't know. Sylvia didn't really show, like, she's good at puzzles, but I don't know about the physicality part. If it's a physical elimination, I could see them calling out Sylvia as well, but I just don't have the highest hopes for the Treehouse to stick together all the way to the end.
Now, if you're looking at the board as it sits here right now, Drew, the biggest political game player coming into this season, the person that you, me, Chantel, everybody, we all wanted this person. And that's the reason you went first in the draft, because you knew if you didn't go first, you would not get them. It's Wes, right? How does Wes sit currently in the game? He was the number one male pick for you. He was someone that both myself and Chantel felt like we missed out on when we did our draft picks. He's been a big part of this episode. He's sort of, wiggled his way into an alliance with the guys, and he seems well cocooned at this point. Do you feel like it is a foregone conclusion now that he's been in the elimination? He has shown that he is a competitor. Obviously, he's got the record for most elimination wins in the history of the show. Do you think people are going to look away from him for a bit now? He's proven himself. He's earned his stripes, or stars in this case, and that they're going to, this is going to buy him a couple of weeks. Do you see a way forward for Wes? Are you still as confident on him right now as you were in the beginning of the season?
I feel a lot more confident right now with Wes. I think that Wes was able to make a power move this past week's episode. I mean, Wes and Yes were a big deal. And what does Wes do? He not only takes out a huge threat against him, who was coming for him and only had blinders for him, but he also strengthen those connections with his alliance members of Brad and Nehemiah, and then also strengthen the new relationships with him and Mark, because now Mark sees oh, Wes would go into an elimination for a friend. Yeah, I can get down with that. I want to get to the end, and I'm cool with Wes. And so I think that Wes has ties with everybody. Now, do I think that he's just going to skate to the finals? No, he still has a huge target on his back. With a big target and Yes leaving, that leaves only a few amount of targets left in the game. And that's going to be Wes and Jordan going to be having the biggest targets. So I wouldn't put it past people thinking, well, maybe I should just throw in Wes and Jordan into the elimination together, or try to make that happen, or have a rematch of the duel where it's Derek versus Wes. And we've seen Derek go 18, 19 rounds with Joss. And so, I mean, that would be a huge headbanger as well, where it's a toss-up if they put a pole in the middle of the ring. So I don't think there's a clear just hand Wes the ticket already. He's Charlie in the Chocolate Factory, give him the golden ticket. He's still going to have a lot of game to have to trudge through to get to the final. But I do think that this does help a lot, and that this power play is going to really help him go really far.
Dolores here is asking, is Wes getting the CT edit? Maybe. You know what the funny thing is, Drew? I love reading edits when it comes to Survivor. And with Survivor in general, there's Edgic, and you can have all these different personality types. You're probably well aware of it if they're an over-the-top complex character, or, it gets quite intricate. But the edit of Survivor, I feel like, is more predictable than the challenge. So it's hard for me to say, yes, Wes is getting a CT edit, because CT sometimes can go missing for big portions of the game and still win the show, because people, like the editors themselves, don't feel like they need to hype CT up. Everybody knows who CT is, so that when he arrives at the end to win it, people are happy with it regardless of what they do in the edit before. And that's the difference for me in the challenge compared to Survivor, is that a player like Wes, they don't need to tell us that much more about him or get us to go behind him, because we've got a reference for him. We've seen him for so many seasons. We know what his game is about. So I don't necessarily look at the challenge anymore and look at a winner's edit, because All Stars 1, I thought that Nehemiah had the winner's edit that season. I was adamant All Stars 1. Yeah, Nehemiah's winning this thing clearly. And I was so wrong with Nehemiah. I don't think he made the final that season from memory. I know he made it last season, but again, it just shows you it's very difficult to predict based on edits. So I personally don't think that he's getting a winner's edit or a CT edit. I also think they're very different players. But obviously, Dolores, I can only go by what you meant in that sentence. You might want to elaborate what you meant by the CT edit. Also, I guess when I'm looking at my top guy, Jordan, I knew it was a risk when I picked him. I just knew he was too good of a competitor not to pick him. I'm very worried for Jordan. I knew if he was going to go to the end, he has to win his way there. I think it's still clear at this point that he's going to have to win his way to the end. Everybody feels very threatened by him. They know what he's capable of. He took out Darrell, who's someone that is feared within the house as well and is a competitor. So I think that's just added to his target. So I'm very worried about him. Nehemiah, I'll talk for Chantel because she's not here. I think Nehemiah at this point is still someone that I maybe his winner edit does look like the edit we're seeing this season. Maybe that is his winner edit, because season 1 he had a massive edit. Last season he had a great edit as well, and both those seasons he couldn't pull it through. So maybe it's a good thing that we're seeing something different from Nehemiah, and it's probably also because we'll know what he's about now. But I do feel like Nehemiah, one thing he has done, Drew, is he has solidified himself as a returner every season for All-Stars now. Would you agree with that? I just feel like he's become staple for All-Stars, and I'm really enjoying Nehemiah and seeing him back every season.
I agree. I love Nehemiah. I loved him last season. I really actually wish he would have been able to win with Melinda last season, because that would have been, I think that would have been like a cherry on top for the whole season for me. At least I think I had Nehemiah and Melinda. So, I mean, that would have really helped me out, but I think that they deserved it. They had a great edit together. I think it's hard to read an overall edit of the challenge in some ways, because they do it one for storyline for the episode, so it's easier to read for the episodes, but for an overarching theme, it's really difficult because they really like to put whoever sells the season the best, or who's going to get the most eyes onto the TV. Because with Survivor, if you have a whole newbie season, it's difficult. You're just throwing out like the winner's edit kind of thing. But with the challenge with so many returning players, you're not trying to get to know these players anymore. You're just trying to get people to watch the season. And Wes was a huge selling point for this season. That's why we're not seeing a ton of Derek. He's not in the storyline. He is a fan favorite, but he's also not in the storyline as much. So they can't really like push him too heavy, kind of like how Casey won on season 37. She's not really in a lot of the edit because she just doesn't have an overarching story she's not an overarching character to go through. But we got a lot of CT. Yes, he won, but I think it was more because the older fans will gravitate towards CT. At least if they have to watch 19 rookies get at least one confessional, they're happy to see CT get 8 in one episode kind of thing. So I think Wes sells the show. He also is in a lot of the storylines. He also puts himself into a lot of the storylines. So it's hard to read what happens with Wes or with Jordan or anything, trying to figure it out just from the one episode's edit and trying to read it through the whole thing, because they're going to put whoever sells the season up front. So that's it's difficult to read it overall, but just reading it episode wise, it's a bit easier to know, like, this person's going into the elimination, this person's probably going to win it, and kind of thing.
It's interesting. Zuduman here saying never liked Nehemiah, and welcome to the live stream, Zuduman. Never liked Nehemiah before All Stars, and obviously in All Stars he's become a bigger player. He's a lot more of the storyline, like you mentioned, and the edit can make or break someone. And if we like or dislike them from one season to another season, we know that they're really good at what they do. So maybe that's the biggest change. I do want to talk about our top pick females, because all of our top pick males are still in the game. So clearly we made a good choice. Our top pick females, two out of three of them are still in the game. We've got Janae and also Kellyanne. Let's quickly just sort of finish it off with both of these players. They're both outside of the treehouse. They're not in this majority alliance. Is there hope for both Janae and Kellyanne to the end here? Do you still feel high on Janae? And what's your thoughts on Kellyanne at this point as well? Because I feel like I've kind of chosen the male and female version of each other for my top two picks, and it was a high-risk strategy. I think Kellyanne is not as capable as Jordan. I should say that she hasn't won and doesn't have the same, I guess, CV when it comes to, or resume when it comes to the game, but still she is capable and she's also being targeted. So I feel like that's a high-risk pair that I have there at the top, but they're still in the game. What's your thoughts on both of these players at the moment and their chances? And if one of them don't win it, who in the treehouse do you think has the winners edit? Because at this point, I would have to say it's Kayla for me. If I had to look at like a traditional winners edit, I would say Kayla is getting the winners edit for females at the moment.
So coming into the season, I thought after getting Wes, I was like, all right, I'll just pick who I'll pick with my heart, and I'll pick John A, even though I knew that was, I think, the riskiest pick. I was like, I don't think there's any way that John A would come into this game without a giant target on her back and then be seeing the first elimination. She doesn't have the best elimination record. I think she's 2-5 at before this past week's elimination. So I'm sitting there going like, she's coming in as a past winner, controversial win, and then biggest target on her back. And there's no way they're going to just let her waltz through this game. And yet she's been able to win so much. And then coming into this episode, she finally doesn't win into the authority since the first episode. And I'm like, okay, well, she's going to have a target on her back. She puts her own name out there, like, put me in, coach. I'll take out Beth. Let's do this thing. So it's crazy to see Jonna's social game and her political game be as strong as it is. I think I'm now leaning on. I'm more worried out of those two. I'm more worried on Kellyanne because she's trying to gather as many numbers, and one after another each week, her numbers are leaving. Kendall and now Beth, who she was trying to get close with. But I think Kellyanne is always used to fighting from the bottom. She's always had this like outsiders mentality that I think that we've seen this. We're gonna see the old Kellyanne come back next episode where she's like, I don't care, screw this, I'm not playing nice, I'm just gonna try to take all y'all out. And I think that's the Kellyanne I wanted to see, and I'm excited to, because I do think that she is a strong competitor, maybe not in puzzles, but physically I think she could take out Veronica for sure. I think Sylvia, I think possibly Ronnie. I think Kayla would, on a physical elimination, I think Kayla versus Kellyanne would be difficult. But I think Kellyanne still has a great shot. But like you were saying about Jordan, Kellyanne's going to have to win. Kellyanne's going to have to really win her way through this game, trudging through sabotages, going through having to pick player after player after player to go up against an elimination. I mean, until something changes or she gets into an alliance, it's going to be difficult. And I agree with you. For somebody who didn't win, I thought Kayla was going to actually win into power this past week, because we actually got this like long drawn out, like, I live in England with my fiance, now husband, and I want to have the baby, and I want to win the money. And to me, I was like, okay, so, well, this is a whole big thing showing her winning into power, and she gets knocked out fourth. And I'm like, well, does she go into an elimination? Lo and behold, she doesn't go into elimination. So I'm like, what is this edit? Why did we get to hear this story of her wanting a baby and living in England with her fiance and needing the cash? Like, it was just weird to me to see that plop down in the middle of this daily challenge when it really had nothing to do with this specific episode. So talk about reading the edit. I was very confused about that. So I do think that there is some validity saying that if there is such a thing as a winner's edit that we're trying to look into, I think you're spot on after thinking about what we saw with Kayla in that one confessional.
For the men, it's more confusing. I don't feel like for the men there is a clear, this person has got the best. Like, I think Wes has got a big edit, and everybody seems to be talking about Wes, but we all knew that was going to happen. So it's not a shocker to us. But for the women, I feel like Kayla is getting that edit at this point. But again, like I said, I mean, my spidey senses have been completely off in the past when it comes to picking winners for the challenge. The other thing as well with Kayla is she is rumored to potentially be in this next season. I think she's still rumored to be in there. And it could also be a way where they're setting it up so we get to know both her and her partner via this, so that when they play in the next season, we actually already have an idea of who he is. Or I found it interesting from the start that she would go and play in this season, of 38 when she said she was done with the main show. Does this mean she gets close and doesn't win? Or does this mean that she does win and she started falling back in love with the show and she wants to go out there and prove that she can win it in the main season as well as in an all-star season, because she knew people might say she's a lot younger than other people, and that's maybe why the storyline is there, that she's so much younger than everybody. She probably should be on the main show type of thing. So there's a few different ways they can spin it. I'm interested to see how it's going to play out at the end of the day. But I can definitely see that they're trying to get us used to her being back soon, and also with her partner.
Oh, yeah, exactly. That's a great point, too. I didn't even think of that, but they could have retroactively was fitting that in, whether it was for this season or trying to get us caught up with next season. Maybe she was already in talks once this All-Stars had wrapped up. Maybe their ride or die was already in their minds, and they were like, could we maybe can we interest you, or would you be interested in this? And maybe we can write down some information or anything. So if we go with this theme, you and him would be fine with it. And she probably said, yeah, put me down for it. So they added this in maybe on the hopes that they would be in for ride or die in season 38. And then boom, lo and behold, they're supposedly on it.
Yeah. Exciting times. Well, we will be back this weekend for a double header, guys. So, if you enjoyed listening to us here today to talk about All Stars, I know a lot of you have been asking for our opinions about the Challenge 38 cast. We're going to be back Sunday evening on 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. So mark it in the calendars. We'll be talking about the Challenge 38, the rumored cast. What is our thoughts about the pairs? Who do we think is the best chance of winning? And anything else that we may have read or heard about on social media. So we will definitely be back to talk about that. Really excited to talk to both Drew and Chantel about the Challenge 38. I have to go do a little bit of homework myself still in the next couple of hours to catch up with Drew, because I know, Drew, you've already put a bit of content out there for people that are interested in your early thoughts, even though coming into this podcast today, we heard, and we won't name specifics because if people don't want to be spoiled at all, we don't want to spoil them. I know we might have spoiled that Kayla would be on the next season, but we don't want to spoil too much on this podcast for people who want to stay purists and not know who's going to be on the season. But we heard that there were changes even 7 minutes prior to us coming on the podcast today.
Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited to talk about it with y'all because, like you said, I already made a video. I've kind of been doing my homework. I have to do a little bit more homework after you shocked me with the news of before we started. But yeah, I'm excited to get some new perspectives because I did put out some videos. I did look at some comments, but I haven't been able to chat about it with anybody. And it seems like everything is settled. Like the cast has kind of like reached its peak. Alternates have been sent home kind of thing. So I just feel like everything is settled. We can talk about it freely, talk about it with both of y'all, and just let's talk about it. I'm excited.
Yeah, so come hang out with us on Sunday at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Ask us your questions. I know a lot of you have been in the live already talking about 38 and some of the news that dropped and things like that. So we'll probably more directly address it in that live stream. Drew, what's happening on the Angel Cake Entertainment channel over the next week?
So much is happening. So tomorrow on Saturdays, I normally do the All Stars 3 power rankings after the episodes. So Saturday, tomorrow, this Saturday, will be the episode 5 power rankings. So where is everybody at the end of episode 5, heading into episode 6, power rankings wise? Then you have Endurance season 4 on Sunday. Monday, I have a clip. Then Tuesday, a podcast. Then Wednesday is the review and recap for All Stars season 3. Then Tiny Table Talk on Thursday, and Friday will be a normal challenge video. And once All Stars wraps up, I'll be cutting back my video wise and video production down to like 3 to 4 videos a week, which I'm kind of looking forward to. So yeah, I'm excited though. I'm excited to be doing so much content, but at the same time, I'm kind of like, all right, I need to take a break.
Yeah. Well, we might, if we're talking about 38, talk about, Challenge CBS and when do we think that cast might get dropped, because who knows, there could be an overlap at some point even between different shows, or I feel like the timelines are going to be very tight. If one finishes, the other one will pretty much immediately start. So there's going to be no shortage of content for you to talk about when it comes to the challenge. Here on the Nullified Take channel, if you're looking and watching this on Reality Realness with 3 S's, if you're not, go and check that channel out. Subscribe to it. Subscribe to all 3 channels and show us some support. We really appreciate it. But on the Nullified Take channel here on YouTube, I do have a few things in the work. There will be some off-season Survivor content that will start from next week with some special guests. I am talking to 1 or 2 Survivor US players at this point. I'm trying to see if I can get through production to get them on for interviews. Fingers crossed. Hopefully, I'll have some players that I can interview similar to what I did for the Australian Survivor version. And there's a lot of more things happening for the challenge as well that I'm excited about, but I can't talk about too much right now. But I'm really excited for the Australian stuff happening and all the international versions coming on board. Keep an eye on the Nullified Take channel. We're going to continue to grow. We're going to continue to bring some great content for both Survivor and the challenge. One of the things I've sort of noticed myself, Drew, is that in the beginning when I created this channel, I wanted to talk about so many reality TV shows, but it's impossible. So I've just decided, you know what? I'm going to be the challenge, Survivor, and Amazing Race. That's it. At this point, while I've got a full-time job, I can't do more than that. It takes a lot of time. And I think you would appreciate it as someone that probably don't focus on as many reality TV shows at the same time as well.
Yeah, I don't want you to burn out yourself. I mean, you're putting out a ton of content right now, and to hear that you still have a full-time job. I mean, I remember doing that, and I just remember how tough it was. It felt like I was doing 2 full-time jobs at the same exact time. It was like, it wears on you. So I'm happy that you're pulling back. As somebody who is still trying to learn how to pull back a little bit and give yourself a break, I really admire it, and I think it'll do well for you.
Dolores, at this stage, no Big Brother at all. I've really fallen out of love with Big Brother in recent times, but I know the Australian version is slightly different compared to US and Canada. Maybe what I'll do for Big Brother is an overall season review. So I think I might still do some seasons where I'll just go, this was my thoughts on the season as a whole, but doing it weekly where I recap on it is a little bit much. And also, don't forget, I will be doing the international versions of Survivor as well. So Survivor South Africa is starting in mid-July, so that will be back on. There's going to be 4 episodes a week of that, so it's going to be super busy to recap that, potentially doing exit interviews for that. So I still need to find out if I can fit that in with doing a full-time job. So but we'll get there. And one of the things I just wanted to once again say before we finish off here, thank you so much for all the people that have subscribed to the channel. I really appreciate it. I mean, I started this thing back in January, and I moved away from a channel that had over 1,000 subs at that time, and I was like, wow, can I even get to 1,000 again? And I'm nearly at 750, and the community, the challenge fans, the Survivor fans, the Amazing Race fans that have subscribed, I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for showing support. I really enjoy doing this with Drew and Chantal, and hopefully, Drew, this is something we do for years and years to come, and there's a whole bunch of new challenge seasons that we still get to see. I want CT to come back when he's in his crutches.
Yeah, for real.
He's not allowed to retire.
This is one of my favorite things to do, is just get together with both you and Chantel and just chat about the challenge. For so long, I felt like I was a person on an island for so long, just making challenge content by myself and not really having much of anybody except for the people who are in my comments to talk to. And I mean, that was great, but to be able to chat with not only everybody in the chat during these lives, but with such fans as you and Chantel is just, it really is awesome. It really is really great. I really appreciate it.
Well, we'll be back on Sunday evening, guys, to talk to you about the Challenge 38. Can't wait for it. Thank you so much for being with us tonight, and catch you guys next